Guys, I am back with part two of homeschooling ADHD and learning differences, learning challenges, learning disabilities, whatever term you want to use. And I'm going to be talking about specifically, I have a list down here because I have ADD, so about what we do to kind of deal with my son's challenges. So I mentioned this in part one, but my son is 8, the one that I homeschool. I also have a 3-year-old son who's neurotypical. My 8-year-old has ADHD, dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, and he has generalized anxiety disorder and sensory processing disorder. So he's kind of just a ball of fun, let's put it that way. And because of all these things, we chose to homeschool. And I myself have ADD or ADHD. They don't even call it ADD anymore. I'm not the hyperactive part, but yeah. So that comes with its own set of challenges, trying to be organized and structured and teach. So yeah, the things that we have been, didn't even make sense. We have been homeschooling since kindergarten, and he went to preschool, and we've been homeschooling since kindergarten. If you want to hear more about the journey of like why we chose to homeschool and what led us to this point, etc., that's in part one, so go watch that. And I talk all about that, you know, how we got our diagnoses and all that stuff. So I'm just going to talk more about the actual homeschooling and what we do. So if you're new to homeschooling and you know your child has these issues, or you suspect your child has these issues, then just, I guess my biggest piece of advice would be to take a deep breath and don't compare. Probably the best advice I could give. Do not compare. Don't do it. Don't compare yourself to other moms. Do not compare your child to other children. Everybody's unique. Everyone has their own way of learning and their own pace of learning. And it is just such a disservice to fall into that battle of comparing. So we're all guilty of it. I am totally guilty of it. And I think as moms, we are more guilty of it. It's just really hard with social media, all those beautiful Instagram photos and blog posts and YouTube videos of all these moms that are doing so much and their kids are doing so much and everyone's like so smart. And it's hard. It's hard. You know, I have really, in the last year, it's been a year of growth and coming to terms and having peace that my child is on his own path, and that does not mean he's not intelligent. That does not mean he's not going to be super successful or do amazing things, just as amazing as anybody else, and whatnot. I mean, you know, who knows? Maybe he'll be the president. I don't know. Anyway, but it just means that his school journey is going to be a little bit different than I planned on it being, or so, you know, in our homeschool group is doing, and whatever. So anyway, it's my mini rant. I wish I could have taken that advice to heart at the beginning. It's really hard when you're first starting out, and we didn't have all the diagnoses and answers that we do now, and I didn't know what to expect. And also, my other piece of advice is go into it with a very open mind. Be very flexible. Try to be flexible. If you have a child who has ADHD, or who has anxiety or sensory processing or any of those things, one of the big, I guess, issues is that they can get very stuck on things, mentally stuck. They can get they're very headstrong typically, and, you know, they have a hard time doing what's called non-preferred activities. So something they aren't self-motivated to do. They have a very difficult time doing it and being motivated. And sometimes the harder you push, the harder they push back. So it's just, yeah. And there's going to be probably a lot of judgment. I don't know. I'm maybe just speaking for myself here, but I feel like I'm being judged all the time for my child's academic knowledge and his behavior and all of those things. And, it's a journey all on its own, whether you homeschool or not. If you have a child who has some of these issues, it's hard. It's hard not to feel like you're failing or whatever. And, that's just not something that's a good hole to go down. So anyway, you are their parent, you are their mother, and, or father. And, there's a reason. So just, you are doing the best you can. You love your child and they will get there. It will be okay. I tell myself that like every day, but it will be okay. I really do have faith that it will be fine. It'll be okay. He's going to be fine. He's just going to have a different path than I thought he was going to have. So that's okay. Anyway, enough on that. Now, some of the things I guess that we specifically do in our homeschool to help handle these things are the questions I get asked a lot. What's our schedule? Again, I wrote this down because I wouldn't remember all of this stuff. Okay, our schedule. We take lots of breaks, and when he was in like kindergarten and first grade, we did very short spurts of school and lots of breaks. And I wish I had done a better job. Anyway, do over. If you could go back, right? You would change things. I would not have pushed so much in kindergarten and first grade. However, I did make sure to get lots of breaks, and we do that more now, even getting outside a lot. So we will start the day off. We start with morning time. And so like my son is 8.5. He's ending second grade, and he does have responsibility every morning. And I find that he's actually been so much better now that we've really stuck to having a habit and a chore chart in the morning time. So, and I struggle with this because I have ADHD. I have a really hard time sticking to a schedule. I am all about planning. Okay. I'm all about it. It is like so fun. I love planning. I like buying curriculum and researching curriculum and yada, yada, yada. But I am not really good at like sticking to schedules. As soon as I get kind of like some pushback, or I get bored or he gets bored, I have a really hard time just like being super consistent with schedules. So fun fact. But anyway, this is something I'm working on. So we're trying to habit train this year for both of us. And one of the things we do for in the morning is the first thing he has to do is make his bed, brush his teeth. I have it on like a dry erase board outside of his room. And, like all the details. I was watching another mom on here, and I will link her in the description because I am so blanking right now. I think it's Project Happy Home is what she is. She was a doctor and I think a lawyer, and she's now a homeschool mom. And her oldest, who's I think a grade older than my oldest, has ADHD. So her videos have been super helpful. I'll link those below. But I got the chore chart, morning time, writing everything down, scheduled thing from her. Now, it's good to be organized, but have flexibility with that organization. So I cannot be super adhered to a schedule. I just can't. It's not who I am, and I know that, and we've tried 1,000 ways, and it's not going to work for me. So this is a way that I can kind of give the umbrella of what needs to be done, but allow for some wiggle room. Like, I don't put times. Like between 8 and 8:15, we are going to make our bed, and between 8:15 and 8:30, we're going to eat breakfast. I don't do that. I just kind of put like the general order of what we need to do for the day. So he makes his bed, he brushes his teeth, he gets dressed, all of that fun stuff, comes downstairs, we have breakfast. I do a walk in the morning, and then while he's doing all that stuff, come back and we have breakfast together, all of us. I have a younger son as well, and we do our morning time at the dining table usually. So, and that just entails we have like a read aloud and our Bible time, and sometimes we throw in some other stuff. Poetry, we usually do poetry as well. And that's our morning time. And then he gets a 20-minute break. I used to kind of let it go over that. And there's this like sweet spot where if it's not enough, he's kind of a bear to handle the rest of the day. He needs that activity, that physical activity in the morning, that heavy work. And getting outside is preferable. But if I let it go more than like 20 minutes, then he's kind of very difficult to rein back in. So that's kind of our thing. So, and I'm still playing around with it, but you'll have to see what works best for you guys. So that's what we do. Excuse me, in the morning, we try to take like a walk or just let them play outside. The weather's really nice right now. In the winter, it's a little trickier. They just play in the house mostly. But we try to get outside as much as possible. And he would stay outside all day, all 4 seasons, if I'd let him. So I don't really have too much of an issue with him getting outside. So then after that, we will come back in and we do our math, language arts, writing, and reading, and all that the other core subjects. So I let him pick between 2 things. So our first thing on our list, and I have this all written down on a dry erase board in our homeschool room, is math and language arts. So he gets to pick what we do first out of math or language arts. So I pick the 2 topics he has to choose from, but he gets to choose which of those 2. So kind of trying to give him some control. So we do math and language arts. And then whichever one we don't do, then after our next mini break, we come back and do the other thing. So he does math or language arts. Then he gets to pick writing or reading to me. And then after we do those 2 things, we take another like 15, 20-minute break. And he goes bounce on the trampoline or, whatever, plays with his brother for a little bit. Does something he wants to do, rides his bike or something for a few minutes. And then we come back and we finish the other items. So say he did math and then writing. Then we come back and we do language arts and reading. And then we have lunch and playtime and, break, whatever. Usually at that point, it's only like 9:30, 10:30, depending on what time we started the day. So it's still, morning time. And so then we get a break until lunch, eat lunch. Then I put my youngest down for a nap. And we do our science and history. And science and history are preferred activities for him. So those usually aren't difficult. I try to save this for the afternoon because they take longer. And I find we get to spend more time on them and enjoy it a little bit more. And because it's a preferred activity, even if he's like a little tired or interested in doing something else, he's willing to come in and kind of refocus for that. So that's kind of what we've been doing lately. And it's working right now. So we'll see. Trying to stick to one schedule for a while. So, also some other pieces of advice I have: movement. Let your kid move. Let him lay on the floor. Let him bounce on a yoga ball. There's so many videos out there on how, in blog posts on how to do school with a child who is a kinesthetic learner or a visual learner. So that's my other piece of advice. Find out what kind of style of learning your child has. I mean, that doesn't matter if your kid has learning challenges or not. Like, that's just a good thing to know. And your style of learning and your style of teaching. So, public school tends to teach very auditorily. And that is like the opposite of how my son learns. So he has to do a lot of hands-on things. We have tons and tons of hands-on manipulatives. We try to teach everything very concrete with hands-on things he can touch. And even better than that is experiential learning. So that's when, say you're learning about farm animals, you read about them, maybe you watch a documentary about it, maybe you play with a farm animal activity set, I don't know, bake farm animal cookies, I don't know, and then you go to a farm. So the experiential part would be going to the farm. So we don't really learn about farm animals now that he's going into 3rd grade, but you get my drift. So it depends on what you're learning about. We try to make it experiential. So go to the places, go to the aquarium, go to the zoos, go to the firehouse and get a tour of a fire engine and whatever. So, try to make it as experiential as possible. That is the best way I found. Take a family trip, make it a family thing. My son is a huge history buff, and I really think that's because, well, I'm a history buff, so, we go to Williamsburg every year, usually twice a year, and that is like his favorite place ever on the planet to go to. So he can tell you all about George Washington, and Benjamin Franklin and the Boston Tea Party and all of that. He's very, very into that. So that is one giant piece of advice. So just take lots of breaks, figure out what type of learning style your kid has and give them and yourself so much patience, okay? Just so much patience. They just really are having a hard day. Let it go, because when kids are super stressed out, they're not going to learn. They're not going to retain it. You're going to be upset and they're going to be upset, and it's just going to be a bad memory. So we year-round school now because of that. So I can just take lots of breaks throughout the year and don't stress about it. So I hope this was helpful. I'm going to make a second video on some more like books and stuff we use. But I hope you guys have a great day.